Rob, do you want to tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got to be here today?
Well, there's a lot to know actually. I'm first things first. I consider myself a child of the king. I'm a husband. I'm a father, and by profession, I'm a hotel general manager.
Nice.
And there's a lot of meat that comes with that meal within itself. So,
What do you mean by meat now?
well, being a husband and a father being my priorities, and then being a general manager slash HR slash babysitter slash disciplinarian slash principal. So there's a lot that goes along. There's a lot that goes along with the job for sure.
Nice. Yeah, I can only imagine. Uh, um, I suppose the first question I have for you is, what are sort of the three biggest, roadblocks or challenges that you see in the hospitality space today?
First things first is staffing. That's huge. I've been in hospitality now for 17 years, and I have literally watched the decline, and coming out of our most recent pandemic, it seems like it just multiplied and got way worse. Hospitality, it's not the easiest. Well, let me rephrase that. It is a job that requires a desire. And, one thing about this life is I believe that we are living in a time where people are very selfish. So it's more take than give. And in hospitality, it's required to give. I coach my staff daily. Like if I see a frown, I'm like, where's your uniform at? Try to remind them like, hey, that Chick-fil-A smile is part of your uniform along with your name tag and everything else. So staffing is one of the biggest challenges. I think when it comes to this day and age, I think pay is an issue. And that's simply because, whenever I first started off in the industry, eggs were a couple bucks a carton, and milk was a couple bucks a gallon. And granted, every company that I've ever worked for, they do yearly merit increases. However, I don't know that has rose to the occasion as far as inflation goes. So pay is a huge deter and a roadblock in our industry. And finally, I think the guests are another roadblock because again, the expectation is, super high. And, when you factor in the people with staffing and the pay and or lack thereof, I think it becomes difficult for anybody to say, I'm willing to do something for nothing. I think it's a cluster of frustration that happens with again, the guests. They have such high demands, and for me, I've worked in anything from a small select serve hotel to, in my case, the largest full service Hilton property in the state of Pennsylvania with 460 guest rooms. And the expectation, I think, of the people sometimes can be very overwhelming in a sense. They feel as if just because they're paying for, a hotel or a room that they're entitled to the world. And, that's not always the case. And then, that leaves us with our backs against the walls at times because, we do what we can. In most senses, and even that has certain limitations. You pay $100 for a room, I can't give you $200 in return. You know what I mean? It's just it's not the same. It's not an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth anymore.
Totally. And I see you're in Coropolis, is it? So is that where are you down in Pittsburgh? Is that where you are?
I'm in Pitt. My workplace is in Pittsburgh, in the suburb right outside of Pittsburgh. But Coriopolis is home for me. That's where I was born and raised, and now I'm right up the hill in Moon Township. So
yeah, my girlfriend actually, like side note to this, is actually from right around the corner from Coropolis. I just Google mapped it there. So
Oh, really?
she grew up in Sewickley or
Oh,
Sewickley or
I
yeah.
was born in Swickley Valley Hospital, and my mom
I
is a Quaker Valley graduate, so she was born and raised in Swickley, right across the
Oh,
river.
wow. I'll have to tell her she's upstairs pretending not to work. So, so I'll have to tell her. But that's great. I love that. And then it's actually super insightful that you went staffing, pay, and then the people, because it's interesting that like we hear that all the time. You know, you're not alone in that opinion, if that makes sense. I think
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
you know, staffing is just so hard. I mean,
yeah.
you know, before I did this job, I didn't realize it, you know, and I hear it now like again and again and again and again. And then pay, obviously, I mean, I guess like, you know, Pennsylvania is not California, for example, where like they've increased like minimum wage hours, which makes even running like those businesses even more difficult again, you know, because those unit economics that you're trying to manage for your business is just like, you know,
Right.
it's just the money's so tight. And to your point about you pay $100 to get a $200, they want a $200 service. And it's like, how do you like exceed that expectation with the people to make them happy and how like,
And
and do you think post
keep it
pandemic thing?
in budget.
Yeah, yeah, and keep it within budget. Is that a post-pandemic experience, or was that happening before? Or that was like
Um,
happening?
I mean, this pandemic has really impacted it for certain. But again, when you're dealing with in the service industry, you know, it's again, people have these what I would call unrealistic expectations at times. So
Yeah,
I will say I think it's always been, and I think the pandemic has again multiplied that.
yeah, that's fair. Okay, so I guess for the next question that I have for you, what kind of emerging technology in the hospitality space is like exciting you? Are you exposed to any kind of cool tech or anything like that?
Expecting any what was
Like, sorry, the question being like, are there any types of emerging technology in sort of the hospitality space that are exciting you today? Are there things you've seen that are like, wow, that's like really cool, or that you're implementing?
Well, yeah, actually, there is the property that I came from prior to the reign that I'm taking on now in my current role. We were a test property for robotics.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and you know, one thing about robots versus people is they listen and they do their job. You know, I will be fair in saying that I almost hate to say this, but you know, if their job is to mop the floor and clean the windows, they're not talking back. They're not having bad days, you know? So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think in some aspects of hospitality, I think bringing in the robotics is something that is going to be great. It's going to be something that is a little more manageable. And quite frankly, you know, they're designed to do a specific job and fulfill their purpose. And they do just that, where, hate to say it, but us as humans, we could get distracted and off track and you know, have a bad day very easily, where all I got to do is go unplug that sucker and press go, and he's on a mission.
Okay, that's awesome. Again, like I've been talking to so many like restaurant people, and robotics is a big deal there in the sense that like we spoke to there's a company that owns. I was talking to some like company like a chief technology officer at a group that owns like a bunch of other different like brands like Friendlies and a bunch of other kind of different restaurant franchises,
Mm-hmm.
and they were launching a pizza concept that had nobody in the restaurants except for a host. So you go in and there were just kiosks, and there was somebody there to show you how to use the kiosk and welcome you into the restaurant. And then a robotic arm would make all of the pizza for you.
Wow.
So yeah, they were looking at it like lowering kind of like, you know, staff limits basically. I mean, if you only had one person or two people in there, you know, and the robots like are very efficient at the time. And like to your point, like, they're not going to complain about like my arm is sore from slinging dough. You know
Right.
what I mean? Like, yeah. So it's interesting. Like the whole space in hospitality is potentially moving in these kinds of directions, these sort of innovative directions. And it's cool. The smile on your face there when you were telling that story as well, which like, you know, the robotics in the test center. It must have been cool being in a test hotel. It must have been cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah, awesome. And then you get to take those learnings with you into the new properties you work in as well, and take those kind of new practices, which is like to another string to your bow, you know. It's awesome. Okay, here's a good question for you. Okay, here's a good question: is the hospitality job market strong?
No. I'm going to say no. I don't think it is. And I say that because, well, let me rephrase that. I think in the market I'm in, it's not
Yeah.
very strong. What I've seen post pandemic, and I was in a role of assistant general manager at the start of the pandemic, and I was victimized by furlough. And I think that the pandemic has kind of almost, for lack of better terms, and I hope you don't have to censor this, but I think it almost scared the hell out of people to the point where the ones that that are in certain positions, they're hanging on to them. So you're not seeing the avail. Now, I will say, in the Pittsburgh market, they have built a ton of hotels because at one point in time we were anticipating or at least hoping for a runner-up opportunity at the Super Bowl. So we were required to put all these room keys in the city, so many select service, so many full service hotels to be able to house an event like that. But that I think has faded away. That was sometime back in 2010 that was being talked about. And it was looking for about 8 years out, but never came to fruition. But it seems that people are in places and they're either sticking to them, or in my experience, it also seems like there's already someone in mind as a replacement for whenever. And again, I think that's me speaking on my level of from a general manager standpoint. Can I go find a housekeeping job? Yeah, I could probably find 10 of them tomorrow. But for my scope of work, I think it's difficult.
So are you saying that there's it's hard to find? It's relatively easy to find the kind of the entry level or the kind of
the stuff that nobody wants to do. The stuff those positions that are
to find those positions. But a general manager position or operator level position is harder to find, you think, in this market now?
In this market.
That person has left the market, do you think? Or they've gone and done other things? Or there's just less people that are interested in doing that job?
I could tell you hospitality becomes very tiring. If you're not good at managing stress levels, you can quickly become jaded. So I know people that just, I had enough, venturing out. I know gig work is something that's really took flight throughout the pandemic, and people had to really kind of get creative. And look, man, even as a GM, I'm struggling to survive. So I don't know how the people that are, not working or doing it, to be honest with you. I think it's a mixture of both. I think some people just throw in the towel and have had enough, because realistically in our world we take we have to heap coals of fire, and we have to bite our tongues. We have to be delighted to serve, and I think on a lower scale and a lower scope, for line level positions, I did a analysis, and what it comes down to is if you come to work 9 to 5 or whatever, 8 to 4, 7 to 3, whatever that looks like, and you leave work and you still don't bring in enough to be considered anything outside of poverty, then I think it poses a real concern. And I think that's what we're up against right now.
Yeah, that's hard. I mean, it's obviously hard to hear, but it's also hard to, it's a difficult one for you to figure out how to manage and get those. Do you see a high turnover in those positions then?
Absolutely. Oh yeah, absolutely. 100%. Almost, I'd say if I had to throw a number out there, 90% of the hotels and the market that I'm in, and my company is all throughout the United States. We rely heavily on contract and temp labor, and even that's unfortunate because that gets to be a iffy, sticky situation in a sense. So and I mean that's fair. And then on top of that, at that point we're also at their mercy because as much as we want to incorporate them and have them to fill and be part of the team, guess what? If they don't show up, I can't write them up. There's nothing I can do about it. It's just we gotta bite the bullet and do what we gotta do to get through to the next day.
So I guess then I suppose the question I would ask you then is like, are there any specific perks or policies that you guys have or processes you're doing to try and retain people, given it's so hard given that there's such a high turnover rate?
Well, and again, that's something that I think would be dependent on location, and some people are almost put in these situations in a sense because we lack certain credentials, we lack certain backgrounds, and I need a job, right? But I think to be fair, I think that the high turnover is something that's always going to be with the hospitality industry. Realistically, nobody wants to clean toilets all their life, or even half of their life for that matter. Nobody wants to, be on the ground scrubbing elevator tracks and the things that we almost require to make sure we keep our building polished and looking good and clean, every nook and cranny. It becomes difficult. And, nowadays we're in a situation where people really don't want to work, and few things have such negative impact on employees that don't show up to work. But I know throughout the pandemic there were a lot of companies, they were doing away with attendance policies. Why? Because we need you. So if I schedule you 5 days a week and you show up 3, thank God. If not, that's when you have the GMs having to, put on a different jacket, and the sales teams and management. You got us cleaning rooms, which, pulls us away from our day-to-day operations. And, it causes long work days and, overwhelming. And if, like I said, at the start, if you're not good at managing stress, but for me personally, I believe in trying to, even through it all, trying to just cultivate a place that people want to come to work. So when you come and work for me, guess what? You're going to come to work and you're going to have fun. We're going to laugh. We're going to cry together. And, it becomes a family outside of your family. I think that for me, what's kept me in the hotel industry for as long as I've been in is because whenever I was introduced to it, I mean, the staff I worked with, we were top tier. We were one of the top 10 of Fairfield and Suites was the brand. We were one of the top 10 in the country, and it was fun. I like to travel personally as often as I can. So the perks and lodgings, 80% of the battle when it comes to traveling. So if I know I can get a $30 room anywhere in the world, guess what? I'm taking advantage. I'm gonna hop on
glorious.
I'm on the Airbus, and I'm in Vegas next week, baby. So it's it has its perks, but I don't think I will say a lot of them are only temporary. So if I'm a college kid and I need a night job, if I could go plug a 3 to 11, it has its advantages for sure. But again, nothing lasts forever. So
totally. I mean, and that makes sense. And I guess there is a type of transition, like a sort of evolution for people in those jobs as well. I guess we talked to a lot of franchises that consider themselves like a cornerstone employer of like a locality, like that pizza place that's always been there, and they will hire teenagers in high school, and some will stay with them. Most will probably go on and do other things, summer job, high school job, that kind of thing. And it sounds kind of like somewhat kind of similar in the sense of like not necessarily like the cornerstone, because obviously you're a hotel, which is not the same as like a small little pizza place in the corner of a town that's been there forever that everybody has like nostalgic memories of. But in the sense that like, how do you engender a really kind of good work environment, good culture of like wanting people to come to work and bring their best selves, and I definitely get that vibe from you, I have to say, Rob, like as in like, I'm like, like you're like, I can feel your like positivity through the screen here,
for sure. If it was my call as far as, a dollar amount when it comes to wages, if that was solely my decision, I believe anybody would be able to have an A1 team if if we can make sure that they're getting reasonable equity out of what they're coming and doing as far as their profession.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we're coming up on time. There's like one other kind of question I want to ask you.
Okay.
Which is, and I think this might be a fun question. This is the kind of more fun question because I think those of us that are over 30 definitely have an opinion on this one. Which is, what do you see are like kind of differences between your older employees that you work with and Gen Z first time into the workplace?
Work ethic.
Oh, okay.
Work ethic. These young bucks now, they're so entitled. They want to work the shift that they want to that they want to work. They want to be here when they want to be here. They want Monday through Friday. They don't want to work weekends because they're partying like rock stars. The work ethic has declined tremendously, and I think for me personally, it was instilled in me at a young age. I started my first job at 11 years old. I was the paper boy for my community, the little weekly papers back whenever newspapers were a thing. And everything. But,
we're aging ourselves. The fact that we remember this.
and I think the bigger aspect of the issue is social media. Nowadays, you have everybody comparing themselves with the next person, and let's be honest, my reality is not your reality, so it's not fair for me to get online and see that you're posting all the good side of life and all the vacations and stuff. I mean, everyone has their struggles.
Yeah.
I think that comparison, I think it's sending our youth and our younger generation into a funk. Just because I went to school with Sally Sue over here and John Smith over there, and they're one's a doctor, one's a lawyer, and here I am. What did I do wrong? And it's kind of it's almost putting our younger generation into a depression. And for me, I was always under the impression that if I don't work and go get it, I'm not going to have it. There's not going to be anything handed to me. I grew up pretty traditional in the culture, single mother who worked 2 and 3 jobs to raise her 2 boys, and I look back and I have no clue how she did it. I could barely work 1 job and manage my own. So, work-life balance is very important, and I think for our younger generation, that the I call it the entitled generation. I think that's why they struggle, because
But that's what you see in the hotels as well. Like you see that kind of entitlement in younger people coming in, and
I mean
that impression, because obviously there are some people that are like good, you know what I mean? But like general impression, like that's like your general impression of people working with you today.
I mean, and honestly, the posture.
You're not by yourself, by the way, in saying that. So
awesome.
It's like you're not alone. Like you hear that from everyone.
It's the posture too. I mean, it might sound weird, but they're sluggish. When I was starting off in this industry, I stood up 8 hours a day at the front desk and was delighted to serve. Nowadays they want to just hang over the desk. They want to be on them phones all day. I don't even think touchscreen phones were a thing. I remember when I got my first Sprint Instinct when it came out, the first full touchscreen, and but now I think it's bad, and I don't see it getting better anytime soon, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, we hear this a lot because obviously, like, part of the product that we sell is like we can reach the Gen Z employee that's not necessarily like on Indeed or like on Craigslist or on job boards, that like they're on TikTok or they're on Instagram or whatever. It's like, how do we kind of meet them where they're at? And how do, like, it's interesting, and I mean, this is me thinking out loud, because you'd mentioned Chick-fil-A, that Chick-fil-A smile that you'd mentioned earlier. And they have such an amazing brand in the sense that, like, they offer a comparative like job to like many other types of restaurants. Do you know what I mean? Like many other franchises, and you're kind of quote unquote competing with that kind of person for that kind of employee because you kind of want them to work in your hotel as well. And it's like, what is it about them that people, like kids, want to work there? And it's not like the waffle fries. Do you know what I mean? It's not like the
Right.
secret.
No.
Do you know what I mean? It's not just the secret sauce. So obviously, there's something that they're doing
Well,
with the way
they
they treat people.
they get every Sunday off. That's a
Well,
every Sunday
that's
off.
something.
Hey, that's half of the weekend. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, you can recover on that.
so that, and I think they do a tremendous job in cultivating that. I used to say I'm going to apply just to see what their interview process like. How do they find these people? But I would say I do know from experience too, and I have actually one right across the street from my hotel. You know, again, there's a $4 or $5 an hour difference in pay, and when you're 20 years old, that's huge. That's huge.
Totally.
When I started off working, you know, I made $7 an hour, which, by the way, is somewhere still around our minimum wage here in Pennsylvania. You know, so, you know, and that was as a 18-year-old in the hospitality industry. And, you know, thankfully for me, I kind of climbed the corporate ladder quickly because I had the work ethic. I had the desire to learn, you know, and I joke now, and I'm still in contact with my first ever boss in this industry. Like, I'm like, I had to get on your nerves because I wanted to know how you did it, why you did it, the background behind how you found out how to do it. You know, I wanted to learn, and I made myself available to do that. I came whenever, you know, there were on my off days to learn new things, and that was just the realistically how I got to where I'm at today.
Well, Rob, this is it.